story is entitled, There Is No Place Like Home. I have a recurring dream of comfortable rot. I've had this dream for most of my life. It never plays out in exactly the same way, but the same basic elements are always there. In the dream, I'm wandering some foreign place, some town center, bombed out street corner or hotel basement, someplace abandoned and exposed, often wounded, crumbling, derelict, rotting. And as I tour the wreckage, I come across a secret dwelling, a living room hidden beneath rubble, a fully furnished hotel room forgotten about to the point where no one knows it's there, an empty shithole of an apartment hiding behind a plaster wall in a dilapidated hardware store. And in these dreams, I always luxuriate in the surprisingly comfortable furniture and decide that this is my new home. And what's odd is that in these dreams, I always seem to instinctively know that I'm not allowed to be in these rooms. That if I'm caught there, that I will be in some sort of trouble, but I do not want to leave them. Because in these dreams, once I find my rotten home, I am always so very, very comfortable. This dilapidated place where no one can find me, no one will intrude, no one will make me do or be anything that I do not want. And that place feels like home. But that's just trouble. You see, that place like home, it doesn't exist. There is no place like home, not for me. And I mention all this because I want to put you in the mindset of when I found myself, age 36, now a woman, standing in the middle of the night in front of the house I grew up in, then a boy, a house that my family moved out of some 20 years ago, and I now being drunk and wearing slutty underwear. How did this happen? You might say, well, it really was no miracle. What happened was just this. My friend threw a party. Not in the house, but just down the street, like 5 houses down the street. The party itself isn't too memorable, apart from when myself and another party-goer found ourselves in the bathroom doing adult activities because I wore slutty underwear to this party for a fucking reason. So after my underwear had achieved its tactical goals, I found myself needing, as I so often needed in those days, a cigarette, which meant going outside. And since I was outside, and being a writer who's always looking for gifts of poetry from the universe, I decided that I needed to walk down the street and stare down my old house. So there I was, staring the motherfucker down. It was the middle of the night, the lights were all out, the house was effectively asleep. You ever try to mean mug someone while they're asleep? It's not effective. Doubly so when they're an inanimate object, but I needed gifts from the universe, and so damn it, stare I did. I lived in that house for 12 years, between the ages of 6 and 17. I lived in that house for twice as long as I had been alive before it. It was not a cruel home, at least not in a melodramatic way, but it wasn't welcoming. It was a home where I had to constantly hide. See, I'd known on some level that I was transgender since I was about 11 or 12, but this was in the 1990s when the concept of transness was completely alien to most people, myself included, and the reality of being queer in any sense meant dooming myself to a lifetime of face-punching and cruelty. So I had to hide who I was, or at the very least hide the things I wanted to explore. Some people are lucky enough to find respite outside of their home, but this wasn't the case for me. I was one of those children whose face looks oh so punchable to neighborhood bullies. And my school was full of them, and for that matter, so was the neighborhood I grew up in. Add to that a younger brother who held our family hostage. He was an angry child who would act out for attention, acting out waves of destruction and screaming and violence, behavior designed to make physical the feelings that words could not describe. And with all the violence and acting out, my parents had no choice but to focus all their energies on that child, meaning that the other one, me, was left with mere crumbs of neglect. And between the neglect and the bullying and the wrong body, I too was an angry child who would start to act out through goofiness and weird behavior designed to put a defensive wall around the feelings that words cannot describe. And it's not the house's fault that this is my memory of it. The house did not harm me. The people in and out of the house harmed me, and they are not here right now. They deserve to be made to feel sad about it, but they aren't here, and the house is the only one here, and so help me, I will stare at it until it feels bad. And so I stare, and I stare, and I stare. I remember that the last time I was standing in the spot, I was probably secretly wearing a thong underneath a pair of Jinko jeans and a corn t-shirt. And now here I am in a fabulous dress wearing much sexier underwear. How far I've come! And I stare. And I realize that the universe will not be giving me the poetry that I want. This moment is not the closure I'd hoped for. The story of my home is not a story that ends with a bang. It is a story that ends with a fart. This building, asleep but not rotting, never felt like home. It never felt safe. And that's the point of a home, right? A place of safety and comfort, not just a place where you sit and are bored. This building never felt that way. Almost nowhere ever felt that way for me. There's that other cliche that home is where the heart is, but my heart has always been firmly planted in my chest and nowhere else. And I know that sounds like a literal misinterpretation of a metaphoric phrase, and it is. But I also mean it metaphorically because I'm pedantic, pretentious, and suffer from it atrociously in my new vocabulary. But I always felt that my heart, my soul, my sense of self was only present when I was alone, was only present when I felt safe to be who I truly was. In the many apartments I've had in my life, most of whom were shared with bad roommates or bad exes, all of whom require at least some, if not most, of your true personhood to be masked and watered down. And the few apartments I'd ever had alone were cursed with the constant stress and fear of losing the apartment. See, I'd spent most of my 20s being one bad week away from homelessness, and often that bad week came to visit. And when you're staring down the choice between paying rent and eating food, that's when you learn that cigarettes are an appetite suppressant and cheaper than groceries. It was an exciting life, but it certainly wasn't safe. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't where my heart was. And I stared at this sleepy house. I tried to think of anywhere that ever felt that way for me, someplace safe and comfortable where my heart was. There were my punk rock days, house parties and shows in weird basements, all that time spent drunk at Cahoots. Rotting places filled with rotting people with rotting souls. And I was so very, very comfortable. These were places full of people celebrating their anger and acting out for attention, acting in aggressive waves of music and art, but also acting out with substance abuse and violence. Acting out behavior designed to take back control of the feelings that words cannot describe. Their anger sounded like my anger. Their behavior embraced my behavior, but their dangers were never to my liking. And when your entire life is based around doing the coke and heroin, you tend to keep at arm's length the people that do not do the coke and heroin. And so while I was welcome with a punk rock visa to visit their shores, they never truly accepted me as one of them. And they weren't wrong. It wasn't home. Maybe home feels like the first time that I looked into a mirror and saw Vidalia. That fleeting moment where I didn't recognize the face before me, and my heart raced because the face I saw was a face that I always wished I'd had. And while that feels somewhat like home, the novelty soon fades and gives way to the terror of realizing that you're very bad at makeup, and now you have to come up with a skincare routine, and also that your natural hair will never grow to look as good as this goddamn lace front wig. There's my theater life and my comedy life. And these are people angry and scared and acting out for attention, acting out in boisterous waves of silliness and singing, acting out behavior designed to take control back of the feelings that words cannot describe. For both these groups, their anger sounds like my anger. Their behavior embraces my behavior. These people welcome me with a visa to their shores, and I'm happy enough to pretend that I'm one of them. But none of these groups are home. They're a vacation. I still act with measured behavior, and I know that once I leave them, I'll have to return to my real life. I'd hoped that night to get closure in poetry, as I said, and thought that while I was totally Gen Z staring the house into submission. But I didn't get closure. And the closest I came to poetry was when I finally gave up, walked back to the party, and the Taco Bell that I had had for dinner decided to seek vengeance in the form of a massive fart. I wanted closure, and instead I crop dusted the entirety of my childhood street. I wanted to gain some new sense of understanding, but the only lesson I learned was the importance of a proper diet while wearing slutty underwear. That was some years ago. I'm 41 now. Still a woman. Still angry. Still acting out waves of silliness in literature to try and finally find the words to the feelings that words cannot describe. The biggest change is that I now suffer from IBS that makes it a major gamble to wear slutty underwear. My heart is still firmly planted in my chest, but now there's another hand on it, gently massaging to heal it from the rot. My wonderful, funny, intelligent, supportive, silly as they are, sexy-ass spouse, Victory, who's sitting roughly there. Victory now holds my heart in their hand. And they seem to like me to some degree. If you were at the last Queer to Tell, you may remember they were up here for 10 minutes gushing about how much they like me, probably because they're a simp. They put up with my silliness and my rotting soul and my endless onslaught of farts. They welcome me with a loving citizenship to their shores, and I am proudly one of them. And I don't think I ever had a home, but with you, Victory, who's sitting somewhere right there in the darkness. With you, I feel like I've stumbled upon one. Hidden beneath the rot of all my anger and acting out, there is a secret room with you in it. And while I hate to end this with the cliche, and I'd much rather end this with poetry, the universe does not always give poetry to us. Sometimes it only gives us something vague and grotesque, which is all to say that Victory, it's true, home really is where the fart is.